today I'm going to share with you a story about the craziest 24 hours in my entire 10-year professional career that really taught me a lot about preparation and about the skill of confidence that I think is going to make you a better hockey player. Now, if I was to ask you about your base, how strong is your base, how would you answer that? You'd probably come back at me with maybe how much you could squat or talk about your core strength. And that is a natural reaction for hockey players and athletes alike, because to be a great hockey player, we need to have a strong physical base. We need to have strong legs, to have a strong trunk so we can be powerful and have great acceleration and fight people off the puck and win those battles. But another important component of that is your mental base. Now, if I was to ask you how strong is your mental base, how would you respond to that? Could you tell me what you're doing to work on your mental base, to make yourself stronger, to work on your confidence? Because I believe without a strong mental base, it's really hard to perform with confidence on the biggest stage possible. Now let me tell you what I mean by that. We're back in March 1997, and I'm a first-year professional hockey player. I'm in the minors at the time, and I'm asleep in my bed in Greensboro, North Carolina, getting ready for a game that night at home. And by all accounts, I've had a very successful first professional season. I'd already played 19 games in the NHL. I'd scored my NHL goal. I was over a point per game pace in the minors as a 20-year-old, and on pace for a 40-goal campaign down there. And everything just seemed to be lining right up perfectly for beginning the following year in Florida next year and having that be my first full NHL season. But everything changed with a phone call. And I got woken up at 2:30 by a call from Brian Murray, the general manager of the Florida Panthers. And he said very quickly and very succinctly, "Jason, we traded you to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Best of luck in your career." And that was the end of the phone call. It was so quick and so brief that I was completely unsure if I was still sleeping, if this was even real. And sure enough, a couple minutes later, the phone rang again, and it was Cliff Fletcher this time, announcing himself as GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he said, "Jason, we've just traded for your rights for Kirk Muller, and you're going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, and we're happy to have you be part of this organization. And we play the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow night in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens, and you're going to be in the lineup. And we want you on a plane at 5 o'clock, so get yourself ready." So my head's spinning. I just got traded for essentially an icon in the sport, straight up one for one. I'm leaving everything that I knew, an organization that I knew, with a roommate and players and friends that I'd built over the years, and in a comfortable kind of low-key environment. Now all of a sudden I'm in the spotlight in Toronto, going to a city I've never been to, with players that I've never met before, with coaching staff that I was unfamiliar with, and everything was brand new. And to top all that off, I had to pack up my entire life to that point in one suitcase and be on a plane in an hour and a half, and would never see those teammates again. So off I was on my journey. I was nervous, I was excited, but I didn't really understand the magnitude of everything until I got to the airport. I had a layover. I forget where the layover was, but I was getting paged at the airport. I got paged 3 times for 3 different interviews, by the Toronto Star, by the Toronto Sun, and by a local radio station there. I think it was The Fan. And then I landed in Toronto, and I didn't really know where I was going. I had an address of a hotel I was supposed to get to, and I hopped in a cab, and the cab driver didn't know who I was. So I'm sitting in the back seat, nervous, excited, wondering what's going to happen tomorrow, and the radio show happened to be all about me in the car. So for 45 minutes I listened to people call in and say that it was a great trade or it was a bad trade, or Cliff made an awesome deal, or what was he thinking. And so this was the stage that was set for me going into the rink the next day. And if you can imagine, just try to imagine walking into Maple Leaf Gardens, 20-year-old kid, youngest player in the dressing room, introducing yourself to Matt Sundin, the likes of Wendell Clark, Curtis Joseph, players like this that you grew up watching, that you didn't have a chance to go to training camp with, you never had a chance to meet before, and now you're supposed to be in the locker room with them and get ready for the Philadelphia Flyers and Eric Lindros that night. It was intimidating, to say the least. And there was so much for me to juggle at that time. There was media expectations and demands from the media. There was demands from the coaches. There was interpersonal relationships of me trying to find a friend in that locker room, or how am I going to go about doing that? How am I going to feel natural in my normal pregame routine? And also trying to manage the expectations of the fans, being recognized on the street as a Toronto Maple Leaf and having those conversations. And all the while trying to put your best foot on the ice and be the best hockey player you can be. It was very challenging, to say the least, and I did not have the toolkit required to deal with all that. I lost sight of what it took to be the best player on the ice at the time. I wasn't preparing properly back when I was in the minors, back in preseason. I was thinking more about what just lied ahead and not necessarily where I was going. And I also understood that it's impossible to play without confidence. Regardless of how strong your physical base is, without the right mental base and without the right skill set to build confidence from within, you cannot be the player you want to be on the ice. So regardless of how fast I was and how good my hands were and all these things that I could do, if I don't feel like I belong and if you don't feel like you belong, you're not going to be able to make those big strides and make those big plays and stand out and be noticed and really step into those goals and dreams that you want. I came across a quote once that said, it is better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. And I can relate to that because those 10 games in Toronto was a massive opportunity for me. And looking back on it, I wasn't prepared for that opportunity. I thought I was prepared because I had the strong physical base, I had the skill set, I was getting the goals where I needed to get them, and I was having all these accolades thrown at me, but I didn't have the mental base ready for that opportunity. So if you're not thinking about the mental base, I challenge you to start thinking about it. Start thinking about where you're going, not just where you're at, and start thinking about how you can cultivate confidence from within. Think about confidence as a skill. I've been able to determine that it is a skill and it's something that can be built, and there are 3 facets to confidence that allow you to be a better player that aren't directly related to whether you've scored the goals on the ice or you've had the confidence in a particular area. And this can all be trained, it can all be developed. So I want you to be the best player you can be, and I want you to be ready for your opportunity.